Everything is fine. We're celebrating a victory after TCU defeated Kansas at Arrowhead Stadium. Let's talk about it next year on Lockdown Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Also, find us on your favorite podcast platform. We're live on a Monday morning. We do a post-game show every Saturday afternoon or whenever the game's over. So if you want to check that out, it is up and available on all the various podcast platforms. And Matt Jennings, freelance writer who covers TCU football, is with us. And Matt, the Frogs won. And I said this Saturday after the game. I was like, you know what? I realized all the caveats that come along with beating a 1-4 football team whose only win was against a school called Lindenwood. That being said, I do think it was impressive that after all the questions about culture and the team and where they were, that they were able to get off the mat and beat somebody on the road. So what were, I guess, the biggest positives in your mind, or just the overall like big picture exhale, we got a victory after 8 quarters of really rough football between the second half against UCF and then that disaster against SMU?
I think what you said is one of them, right? The ability to get off the mat, the ability to stop the bleeding of this really could have spun away from you and spiraled out of control in a really disastrous way very quickly. And they were able to go on the road against, to your point, I think a team that's down this year from what the Kansas that we saw from the last couple years, but there's still a ton of respect for Lance Leipold, an incredibly well-coached team and a really talented team at a lot of positions. And for you to go on the road and get a win in non-ideal circumstances, you turn the ball over 3 times. And defensively, you didn't have everything going for you early and you got in a hole. Like, you were able to salvage that. I mean, I used the word unsalvageable last week, on talking about this team, the way things looked coming out of SMU. I did not have confidence in certainly in their physical toughness and in their mental toughness to be able to rebound from that. And they did. So credit to them for that. I think that is not nothing. You could even say it's something, right? And then on top of that, like, you can get into like the specifics, right? The things that we have harped on, their complete inability to run the ball. They ran the ball as a team for 164 yards. They had a pretty darn even run pass split. Threw the ball 37 times, ran at 35, which is wildly different from what we've seen all season. And so you saw like nuggets, right? Of like, okay, if the defense can play the way they did in the last like quarter and a half against Kansas, if the offense can run the ball as effectively as they did for pretty much the duration of the game, then you start reconsidering some of the kind of dour predictions that we were making, 7 days ago for sure.
So as far as things that improved, you talked about the run game. A couple adjustments they made. Somebody asked me in the post-game show if they tweaked the offensive line, and I said no, and my apologies, I was wrong. Ben Taylor-Whitfield started for Mike Nichols at right tackle, and I saw Remington Strickland get some more reps as well in place of Carson Bruno at times. And then maybe the biggest thing, Jeremy Payne, not only as a runner, even though he did some good things there, he had a 32-yard run, which was the longest run of TCU season so far, which is a sad sentence, but it's also, kind of something to be happy about. But he was throwing some blocks out there. I mean, he just looks like a guy that can get it done. Now, I will say, I rewatched the game this morning, and after the game, I was like, this dude has to be your starter. It does look like he's a guy that still doesn't fully know what's going on with the playbook. Like, there were on that Hoover like escape and throw to Eric McAllister, it looks like he went the totally opposite direction of where he's supposed to go on that play. There were some other times where he was unsure, but what I like is that he just seems confident and he's got, a plan to get north and south out there. So I guess all those things, what stood out to you the most, Matt, whether it was some changes at running back or the O-line that was most effective in what they did Saturday?
I think I agree on Payne. I think the stuff you're pointing out with him is indicative of, oh, this is why he wasn't higher up in the rotation earlier, right? And like, this is true for every program, right? Like, you have to balance you have younger players who maybe have the athleticism and the talent and the spark that you need with the fact that they're younger players and they're going to make mistakes. Do you trust, a more veteran player who maybe isn't as dynamic or doesn't have as high of a ceiling, but is going to be in the right place at the right time?
Yeah.
Knows their assignments, all of that. So if Payne can continue to take those steps forward, I think that's big for you. I do think the offensive line was the thing that stood out to me. And again, I think you grade this game on a curve for a few different reasons. I think one of them is this Kansas team came into the game 1-3. They're now 1-4. I'm not sure how good their defense is. I think this was probably the best game that an offense had played against Kansas to this point in the season. So there is that. But were you able to create those running lanes just because of the quality of your opponent, or like did you figure something out with your offensive lineup up front? Because if that's the case, then that gives you a little more hope for, okay, like if Strickland's out there and Taylor Whitfield's out there and that's the group that you're running with instead, are you going to be able to get some more push and create, just less of a muddy picture? That's the thing is the blocking up front in the run game had been so muddy for me. That's the word I kept using, that there's just no clear seals for the running backs, whoever it was taking the snaps, to kind of exploit. And there were clear lanes on Saturday. I would like to see what they do against some higher quality defenses in that regard. But if they can keep that going, then that I think is your because that just opens. We keep talking about it, that opens up so much of the other stuff, right? It takes pressure off of the passing game and Josh Hoover. It opens up things that you want to do in the passing game, right? If the other team has to respect your run game when it comes to play action, when it comes to the RPOs, changes the numbers in the box. It just changes everything if teams actually have to respect that, and they haven't yet. You can get, if they have to going forward because of your running back options now with Payne and because you're getting better blocking up front, then I think the complexion and your kind of your projections change significantly. Again, we just need a sample size against maybe some higher level competition,
right,
and see them sustain it for more than 1 week.
For sure. When we come back, we'll flip sides of the defense, talk about some young guys who made a little bit of an impact, and just a defense that looked a lot more competent this week. That's coming up here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We do need to talk about our great sponsors, though, because without them, this show wouldn't be possible. Man, I'm so good at this. FanDuel. FanDuel app or FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app today. One $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. That's a great return on your investment. If I was a financial advisor, that's something I'd say. Probably wouldn't advise gambling if I was a financial advisor, but I'll get back to the thing here. One $5 bet, $200 in bonus bets. NFL, college football, Major League Baseball. The NBA is right around the corner. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. FanDuel, it's where the game starts. Official betting partner of the NFL. I'll be honest, after the first two drives on Saturday when Kansas went up 14-7, I thought, okay, the only way TCU's winning this thing is if they put up like 50-plus points and you get one or two stops. But to the defense's credit, they stepped up. And some things that I liked, Marcus Deal needs to be on the field more. He started at nose guard. He's a force, right? Like he's just got the size and athleticism you want at that position. Max Carroll, who came in actually for an injured Namdi Abizor and did some nice things, made some plays. I saw Terrence Cooks out there, which honestly, Matt, forgot he was even still with the program, but he didn't look totally lost out there, so that was a plus. I guess for you, I mean, they gave up those first 2 scores, and hat tip to Jeff Grimes for not just running the ball constantly. That was a weird choice by him, but that's football sometimes. They made the plays they had to make. And honestly, man, like there was a stretch there in the third quarter where the offense kept tripping over their own feet and couldn't get out of their own way. And the defense like legitimately kept them in the game, which was not what I would have bet on before the game started.
Yeah, I think I think with Deal, he's been someone that TCU fans have been clamoring to see more of for a minute. And I think it's another example of like trying to find that balance of like, okay, like this is a guy who physically is ready and gives you matchup advantages. Is he ready to be responsible for is he ready to handle the responsibilities and know his responsibilities based on what the offense is doing on any given play, and he's going to make the right read in enough of the given situations that it's a net positive for you, right? So, that's again, just like we were talking about with Jeremy Payne, that's the same conversation you're having with a lot of these young guys who I think we've been questioning, like, why aren't these guys on the field? But I agree. I mean, like, it was a difference for sure in terms of your ability to kind of just get some push in the middle, get some push up front. Yeah, I was concerned early as well. You get down 14-7 after 1, and even like I think into the first, the first drive of the third quarter, or Kansas' first drive of the third quarter ends in a touchdown. It's an 11-play drive that lasts for 6 minutes. You're kind of like, oh, is anything changing here? Are there any adjustments being made? And then after that, like they really did, bow up. They didn't allow a touchdown after that. There was progress being made. It is one of those things where it's like you kind of wonder, it's like, okay, how much does in the NFL they have a preseason, in college football they don't? That's part of the reason why you put non-conference first, and sometimes you schedule kind of soft in non-conference because you need some time to kind of get up to speed and know what you have, and then figure out what your rotations are, and everybody's on the same page. Could this be that for the TCU defense of like they were just out there just doing stuff for the first month? And is this the moment where it's like, oh, like things start kind of clicking for them in terms of everybody being in the right place at the right time, and they've also kind of figured out what their lineup is? That's, I think, kind of an optimistic reading of the situation, but it is certainly possible if the second half on Saturday is any indication. Again, I do think you grade on a curve a little bit, just because again, this Kansas team, I don't know what they are offensively. They're a big step back offensively than they have been like when Jalen Daniels was playing at his best and when he was healthy. I think he's fine health-wise now, but he is not the same in this Jeff Grimes offense as he was in previous years under, I can't remember the name of the offensive coordinator, but he's at Penn State right now, and Penn State's killing it.
And Andy Kolecki.
Right. And it's very different for him, and not just as a runner, but to your point, I don't think Grimes knows how to scheme things for him in the passing game the way that they were being done before. And so I think you grade this game on a curve. The grade is still a passing grade, which is the important thing. You add a W, which is the thing that you wanted, right? And then you get to go home and play a Houston team that looks pretty darn, is reeling right now. It looks like they're at the beginning of the beginning stages of what's going to be a tough rebuild for Willie Fritz. That's if you can get through that game and you're sitting there at 4-2 heading into a bye week before you play Utah. You would have told me that was the case before the season. That's assuming you win this week. But if you would have told me that before the season, I would have thought that your losses would have come to Kansas and UCF instead of SMU. Yeah. But 4-2, I would be like, yeah, that's a totally respectable mark to be at the midway point of the season. Again, you got to get there, which is not a given, but they open as a 17-point favorite against Houston. If Houston's offense looks like a little bit of a mess, you showed some things on Saturday against an opponent who you had advantages in matchup advantages with. You took advantage of it. Keep doing that. And, the SMU loss smarts. It's ugly. You don't like it, but it does not have to define your season. And they didn't let it define your season on defense or overall.
Friends, hear me here. I really don't like calling out individual players. Just as a philosophical thing, I try to keep it, program, coaching staff, position groups. I realize guys are getting paid now. I get it's different. I still just feel weird about it personally. I don't know what you can do at this point with JT Broughton. It's a real problem. I mean, I loved what he did against Eric Aomanor, at Stanford. And I realize if you had a more flag-happy officiating crew that day, then that could have gone differently. But whether it's penalties or just getting beat, it's been an issue. Now, I think Channing Canada did some nice things in limited action Saturday. I know he's had his struggles too. I want him to be successful. I just feel like you're at the point where whether it's Canada, I mean, I don't think they want to give true freshmen reps, but you got Devondre McGee and Julian Knox there. You got to start throwing some bodies out there. Javon McIvor, some more people, some more rotation, just to see if there's a better way to move forward at that spot.
And with Broughton, I do wonder. I agree. The short answer is I agree. I think you gotta, just like you did on the defensive line and the offensive line, just like you're doing at running back, and now even at receiver, right? Like Eric McAllister's getting out there some more. You're deviating from like what had been your established starting lineup at a bunch of different positions, right? I think it's okay to do that, and linebacker at safety as well. I think it's okay to try some other guys out there and see what happens, right? I do wonder a little bit with JT Broughton if this is a little bit of a Andy Avalos was at Oregon when early on in Broughton's career when he was at Utah, and in 2020 he was all Pac-12, which I believe also lines up with when he was at Oregon. Like if he got to see him up close, and he still has maybe like an image of what his idea of who Broughton was at the time, and so he's like, yeah, let's go get him. Are you kidding me? And then the player that you get in the portal is not the image of the player that you had from a few years ago. That happens. People's players' developments get it gets upended or something happens or an injury or whatever. It happens. That's no knock against him, but I think you do need to be realistic about the situation that you found yourself in for a couple weeks with the lineup that you have, and you just like at other positions, you're trying something else and you're maybe seeing some positive early returns. Try something else. There's nothing keeping you from going back if it doesn't work out. But right now, it might even be you have to see what other options you have. And again, coming up against a Houston team and then do an open date, like this is a really good time in the schedule to do it before you have to go to Salt Lake City and play in a hostile environment. Your defense has to be really locked in for that game. Figure out what you're doing with your lineup before you have to go make that trip.
I want to close our show with questions about two different quarterbacks. I'll explain next. You're on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. Gametime. If you need tickets, download the Gametime app today. They have last-minute deals, so if you're not a planner, it doesn't matter. You can still get good market value on the Gametime app. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions, as always, do apply, but download the Gametime app today. They'll give you a picture of what your view from your seat's going to be. They'll also let you know exactly what the fees are going to be up front. There's some fees because nothing's free in life, but they tell you what they are so you don't go to the checkout and suddenly, oh, man, I'm spending $50 extra. That won't happen on the Gametime app. Gametime! Download it today. We're happy that they are here with us on the Locked On Network. I'm going to ramble about Haas Haney for a little bit, and we'll see if we get to a question. I call this a Matt Mosley special. My former colleague used to just kind of talk for a long period of time, and then he would just stop talking, and someone was just supposed to respond to whatever it was he said. But Haas played a little bit on Saturday. He had a run for a first down on 4th and 2. They brought him in randomly in the second half, I think like in that drive where they actually chewed up some clock going down to score and make it an 11-point game. And then they put him in at the very end of the game, and he stepped out of bounds, which wasn't a great move. But, again, young players learning on the fly. These things happen. I'm just sort of confused. I was a big proponent of using him in some capacity this year and not really worrying about his red shirt, because I don't think red shirts really mean much of anything in today's college football world with the portal existing and all that. I do wonder, though. They've used him in both games that it appears that he's been healthy so far this year. So you got 2 more, and then, anything after that, you're using that eligibility. But Matt, on one hand, I'm like, if you're going to burn his red shirt, I need to see him on the field for more than just like 2 or 3 plays a game. At the same time, you've got a really good quarterback in Josh Hoover, who when you put Haas on the field, you're taking him off the field. And then I also wonder, like, are they ever going to let him throw? Because at some point, he's not Tim Tebow, right? Like, he's not just this. I think he's very good as an athlete, but he's not just this huge force that can just run over people. You have to make defenses account for something else. All that being said, what do you think about how they've used him early on in this process?
Yeah, and the injury that he suffered against Stanford kind of threw a wrench in things as well, in terms of we might have a clearer idea of what their plan is for what to do with him if he had been playing over the last 3-4 weeks. If he had gotten snaps against, he probably would have gotten some significant snaps against Long Island, if we're being honest, right? If that was really their plan. If their plan is to burn the red shirt. But no, I agree. If you're gonna burn the red shirt, burn the red shirt. Like, quite frankly, maybe even move him up to 2 on the depth chart and put him out, because I think Ken Seals is there as like a an emergency situation thing, but he's not. He's what the ceiling is with him as your quarterback. You don't know what that is yet with Haas Haney, and I think Haas Haney, quite frankly, fits a little bit better with what Kendall Briles' vision of what his offense would be, right? The fact that Josh Hoover is clearly not comfortable running option stuff. Forget like athleticism or running wise. I think he's a fine runner. Like he's not current Kirk Cousins, which is what I'm currently watching on Sundays. Like he's got some mobility, but like the ball handling aspect of it, he's clearly not comfortable with. They've had those botched handoffs or pitches and stuff. Like it's just not. And so that removes that dimension of the offense. Haas Haney would bring that back, right? If he's going to be, if you had to bring him in an emergency situation, or to your point, using him in more spot duty. And so if that's what you want to do, and if you want to open up that dimension of the offense, then yeah, I think, move him up to number 2 on the depth chart and be done with it. That's my opinion. I know it's a lot of pressure to put on a true freshman, but that's why he's not starting. And it's not that much pressure when Hoover's healthy, because, Hoover's playing well for the most part. With the exception of some really like tough moments ball security wise over the last couple of weeks, Hoover's been everything that you could want quarterback wise through the first, 5 games of the season. And, so there's no reason that you're not bringing Haney in to kind of like create a quarterback controversy or anything like that. It's just to give defenses a different look. And there's also the matter to kind of consider of like, whatever you pick, like be committed to it, because right now we're in an environment in college football where a lot of players, if you don't get significant snaps, as a freshman, you're jumping in the portal, you're listening to offers from other schools, that kind of thing. I have no idea. I have absolutely no idea what Haney's kind of, strategy
Thought process
or
is,
what
yeah.
what he or his family would be thinking about come the end of the season if he burns a red shirt but like hasn't seen the time very much, or doesn't burn his red shirt and he's got another year to go. I don't know what their mindset's going to be. I know that if you are the coach of TCU in 2024, your job should be commit to whatever you're going to do. And so if you're going to bring him in and you're going to say, we think that you can be a useful piece on our team right now, and we're going to give you live game reps to help you develop with the goal of you being a starter for us down the road, then truly commit to that and give him and his family and the people in his ear reason to believe that, right? Or say, hey, we are going to redshirt you because we want to maximize your career and your value long term here, and we want to take that route. Be committed to it. Don't go halfway one way or the other, and then clearly communicate that to Haney and to his family, so like you are all on the same page. And then if he makes a decision later on, that's his decision. I think you've got a little bit of leeway. I think what helps you out is that he's a TCU legacy, right? And so this was his dream school, and so I think I think you are in a good spot with him in terms of this is probably, I would think this is where he wants to be. This is where he wants to make his name at the college football ranks, and so I think that gives you a little bit of flexibility. But again, I think clear strategy, like clear plan and clear communication in terms of what your intentions are going to make the whole thing go a lot smoother.
I said in the post-game show that I didn't think Josh played great Saturday, and I got some pushback for that. I think when you play really well, which I feel like he has all season, expectations change. The two picks were just rough. The first one, he put too much air on the ball. I don't know if he didn't see the safety, what the problem was. The second one, I understand that could have been on Savion Williams for just not running like the proper route. But am I being too harsh there, Matt? He made plays in winning time. I thought overall he did a nice job. They just, unfortunately, like they need him to be really good every week. And when he's not, it puts a lot of pressure on the whole team because they just have some deficiencies that are not easy to overcome.
I think Hoover has played very, very well this season. I think where he thrives is in structure. I think where he thrives is the rhythm and the timing of the passing game is locked in and everybody's on the same page, because and when that has been the case, it's take the snap, do your drop back, make your first read, your second read, ball's out, and it's out with accuracy and with timing and decisiveness. And when that's happening, he's delivering the ball. He's very, very accurate. He's been efficient. He's making the right decisions. It's all been good. The moments where it has broken down and usually where we're seeing those turnovers are the moments where either because of pressure from the front, from the defensive front, or something is muddy in the back end, whether it's like maybe it's something, the secondary is being physical and throwing off the timing of the routes, or maybe it's just good coverage. And so he has to move further along in his progression than maybe he was intending to. That pick to Richardson, I think, was a good example of like, it was unclear to me if like Richardson was the first read and he's just like the timing wasn't there for some reason that we couldn't see. I didn't look at the all 22. Or if it was Richardson was not his first read and he's coming to him and that throw was late. It was late. And it's a throw outside the numbers. A middle field defensive back should not be making a play on the ball in that scenario. But because the ball was late and hung in the air for a long time, that's what happens. Whereas if that ball was kind of in the normal timing and rhythm of the passing game, that almost certainly does not happen, right? And so that's the thing to me, is if they can just maintain their timing and the rhythm, then I think they're in great shape. And the late touchdown to McAllister was an example of like, even when they do have to kind of like get a little bit out of rhythm and get out of structure, he can still he can still make it work, which I think is good. And if he can grow that area of his game, then I think he's going to be really, really threatening and a really tough problem for defenses to crack. So, and I think we've seen evidence of him being able to do that. It's just a matter of like reining it in a little bit and not getting a little bit out of control. One more thing on Haney, just like because I was thinking about it now, was you want to talk about like in big moments, like Hoover has delivered for you in a couple of, he had some big mistakes, but he's delivered for you in big moments. I talk about a high leverage situation that was like bringing Haney in for his first snap in like a month on 4th and 1, like in Kansas territory.
Yeah.
Like I was like, we're really doing this. They got the first down, so it was fine. But like that's an instance of like, okay, like that doesn't feel strategic to me. That doesn't feel like that feels like, okay, like we're not confident in our short yardage. We don't have confidence in our short yardage offense. So we're gonna try something different, and we're gonna put the true freshman quarterback out there like that. So I think take the gas off a little bit, like put him in a position where the stakes are not so high, and continue to trust Hoover, playing at the level that he's playing at. If the offensive line and the running game continue to progress the way that we saw them begin to against Kansas, then I think things mellow out in a big way. Hoover's had a rough couple weeks in terms of the turnover department, but he's still getting you yards and moving you down the field efficiently and getting you touchdowns, getting you points. There's nothing to be wary of, panicky about right now. He's a top 10 passer in the country in terms of all like so many metrics. You're doing fine. Everything's good. Just take a deep breath, run the ball a little bit. You're good.
That's fair. Another funny thing about that 4th and 1 play, they had Payne out there too. So they had 2 true freshmen. I think Johnson was the other back because they had 2 backs. But hey,
throwing him to the fire, man.
Yeah, just run QB sprint to the right, and that's what they did, and it worked. So I think you are right, though. I feel like they're using him because they don't really have a great feel for what to do in some of those situations. And yeah, that's how it is. But Houston on Friday, win, get to a bye week. That's the plan. This is Lockdown Horned Frogs. It's your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.